Okay, so as you've just seen, I ordered a drone clone from wish.com. The idea was to see what is on the market and what they're trying to say are similar to proper drones in inverted commas, because every drone is a proper drone technically, and I think there are advantages of all drones. So I just wanted to sort of see, I've got the Spark, here it is. This is what I own. I'll put it up there for you. And this great, it's robust, it's worked in pretty much all the weathers that I've thrown at it. The only issues I've had with it are when I was up in the Scottish Highlands and it lost signal when it was tracking my van, and it went back to where it took off from, which was a bit of a nightmare because I had to turn the van around and try and go back to it, and it was sort of hovering over some grass next to an edge, next to a ledge on it. I was a bit panicky, but it's done great stuff. So that's the proper DJI Spark, and Wish.com are advertising this as a Spark clone. I'll put it up there for you. As you can see, there's similarities, but there's also massive differences. The notable differences are that the propellers pop out on arms like this. The propellers aren't foldable, and the weight of it as well. I'm going to weigh them both, but I set this off in the office just to see what it did, and obviously no breeze in the office, all windows closed, and it took off and then flew sideways into the window and crashed, and a bit fell off, which I've managed to shove back on. One of these, the tops of the propellers fell off, shot across the room. But there's, as I say, the similarities, there's differences, and I just wanted to see what they are. This was like, how much was it? A couple of £100 when I got it, and the batteries are like 50 quid each. That's one of the main notable differences, that obviously you can replace the battery on that and then keep flying, whereas this, you have to charge, you have to plug it in and charge and wait for it to charge. There's no external batteries that you can attach, but that means that this is a lot lighter. But then that obviously, that lightness, even though it probably will come in under 250 grams, which was a weight limit, they've changed that now. They changed that back in January, I think. The stuff on the internet about it is a bit vague, but basically it's all drones that are going to be treated the same, so the weight doesn't really matter. But it'll be interesting to see what the differences are between these two drones, because apparently they're the same, but clearly even just doing that, they're not the same. So I'm going to be looking at the weight of them. I'll get the scales out in a minute and see what the difference is. I'm going to be looking at the functionality of it, the way it takes off, the way it lands, and obviously stuff like the video, images and footage, because that's the all important thing of it, I suppose, and how it sort of handles outside and what the differences are, and then in the end what the benefits of both are and what the pros and cons and all that kind of stuff. So let's get the scales and start off with the weight of the drones. Right, so let's start off with the Spark. I'm going to do it without the battery first, and then with the battery. So let's turn the scales on. So without the battery, it's 204 grams. Let's pop the battery in. With the battery, it's 301 grams. So the clone, let's have a look at the clone version of it. Obviously there's no battery to detach, so it is as it is. Put the whole thing on, and it's 144 grams. So it's well under the 250 gram limit, which was in place, that isn't now in place anymore. But that is extremely light. It's over half the weight difference. That's over twice as heavy as that is. So this is winning on lightness, but that isn't necessarily a good thing, because it needs some weight in it in order to function in the sky and hold its position and not be blown around by the breeze and that kind of thing. So we'll see what the weight test achieves. It doesn't really show anything, but it was something that I definitely wanted to look at. So 2 of them is less than the weight of that, but I feel like 2 of them are going to crash much more easily in a slight breeze, and you're probably not going to get as good handling on it as well. So the next one is probably looking at the way it's designed, the body, the propellers. Let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at the DJI Spark, the official DJI Spark first. Obviously it's quite thick. It's got a, let's compare them actually. The body is probably slightly longer on the clone, probably not by much, by a centimetre if that. The bodies are pretty much the same width. This is excluding the arms, but the depth, if I just turn that over, then you can see the depth difference. When you take everything into account, they're pretty much the same depth, but obviously they're different because the body is thinner, but you've got the landing gear on the propeller flip outs, whereas on the DJI the whole thing is thicker, and you've got the landing gear on the battery and on the bottom of the body as well, with the propellers up out the way. So I think that's better function wise because you're not relying on your propellers to land on. Your propellers are up and out the way, not being affected by any stones or anything if you're landing on the floor. Whereas this, if this lands incorrectly, if it lands coming down at an angle, you're going to knacker your propellers. So again, this is winning on that. Obviously, the arms on the Spark don't move; they're part of the body, which is a bit of a gift and a curse, because if you broke that, then you'd have to replace the whole thing. If you broke the arm, you'd have to replace the whole thing. Whereas if you broke obviously these come out, they're on a hinge. You could, if that broke, you could perhaps buy a new bit of that or fix it somehow and then reattach it with a new screw. If I'll open this up fully, the sort of retail area that you're getting is, if I do that, you see it's much bigger. The clone is much bigger. Even if I open the propellers to their max to show the sort of the space that the Spark takes up, the clone, and you see the propellers go out much further. But they're kind of packed down to the same sort of size, so I can see why it's sort of marketed as a clone of the Spark, but really it's, by looking at the weight of it and the dimensions of it and just the general look of it, it's nothing similar really. But we've got some more tests to do. We've got the flying, well, we've got takeoff and landing and the flying and the image and the footage as well, the footage quality. So let's head outside somewhere away from people and buildings, because I feel like this is probably going to crash, and compare the two. Try and do similar flight paths, and then I can put the footage side by side and see which is better. I know which is going to be better. This is clearly going to be better, but is the price of this, the massive increase in price of this compared to this, is the footage that much better? So let's go and have a look. So as you can see, it's been a few months since I recorded the first half of this video. I'm excited to see the differences between the two drones as I finally get them up in the air. But whilst I do that, here's a quick word from the ads. So this is probably the part where you're expecting to see some film footage from the clone. The clone didn't work. It's been a slightly pointless video, to be honest, because the battery failed. It was just, these lights underneath were just flashing, nothing was coming to life. The app wouldn't connect. The controller, where's the controller? Controller was useless. Nothing worked. So all of this can pretty much just go in the bin. I'm trying to recharge the battery, but it doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't seem to be active and coming to life at all. So I think, as much as I wanted to say that, I was basically hoping that my final thoughts on this would be that obviously they're not as good as the DJI, but they perhaps have their place for learning and sort of getting to grips with a cheaper drone before sort of maybe advancing and spending a little bit more. Instead of buying a hundreds of pound drone to start with and crashing it, you buy this and crash it. But I can't even crash this, it won't even take off. I can't see, it doesn't work. I don't want to be too down on it. It might just be this model, this drone by itself that's not working. I don't think I've done anything wrong because I've been using my other drone for a couple of years, but this is not worth even the 40 quid that I spent on it. So, as much as I wanted to do the comparison and compare taking off against each drone, this one didn't take off, so it gets a 0. This one did take off, so it gets a 10. This one didn't land, so it gets a 0. This one did land easily, so it gets a 10. This one flew, gets a 10. This one didn't, gets a 0. You can see where I'm going with this. And as much as I was hoping that this video was going to end with that final message, like I said, I just be careful what you're buying off wish.com, because this was a bit of a waste of cash, but it was worth a go. It was worth having a play with, even though it hasn't worked. I'll try it again if I do get any joy with it, which I don't think I will, because it feels like a bit of a dud to me. Then I'll maybe post another video at another time. I was hoping that the footage wouldn't really matter from this, that it would probably be okay. Probably not if you were going to go out and you wanted 4K quality, but then this doesn't do 4K quality either. But it's kind of what you need. I only use that for YouTube stuff, so everything's compressed anyway, and I don't send anything out in over 1080 anyway. So I'm a bit gutted that this video's sort of come to an unwanted end, a point where I wanted to have some better news about this really. But yeah, if you're buying anything from wish.com, just make sure you can either return it or you know what you're buying, because this certainly is no DJI Spark. So even though it says it on the description. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for following me through this rather dull in the end comparison video, because there was no comparison, because that is rubbish. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again on the next one.